Behind the public image of Suze Orman as a confident, sometimes blunt, personal finance guru lies a story that is far more complex, vulnerable, and instructive than her television persona suggests. Suze Orman did not emerge from wealth privilege or flawless financial judgment. In fact, what ultimately made her voice resonate with millions was not perfection, but the hard-earned clarity that came from making painful mistakes, confronting fear directly, and rebuilding her relationship with money from the ground up. Her journey reveals that true authority in personal finance is not born from numbers alone, but from lived emotional experience with insecurity, recovery, and self-responsibility. Suze Orman's early life was shaped by instability and self-doubt. Raised in a working-class family, she internalized fear around money long before she understood how it actually worked. This fear did not disappear with ambition. Instead, it followed her into adulthood, quietly influencing her decisions. One of the most defining moments in her life came when she lost nearly everything she had earned early in her career due to trusting the wrong people and not understanding the risks she was taking. This financial collapse was not just monetary, it was emotional. It forced her to confront a truth many avoid: intelligence and effort do not protect you from financial pain if fear and denial are left unexamined. This experience became the foundation of Orman's philosophy. Unlike many financial experts who focus purely on strategy, she focuses relentlessly on behavior. She realized that most people do not fail with money because they lack information, but because they make decisions from fear, shame, or the need for approval. Her advice is therefore designed not just to inform, but to stabilize. She speaks about emergency funds, insurance, debt, and retirement with urgency, not because these topics are exciting, but because they are protective. Safety in her framework is the prerequisite for freedom. One of Suze Orman's most distinctive traits is her insistence on emotional honesty. Behind the scenes, her work is less about budgeting spreadsheets and more about helping people recognize why they spend, save, or avoid money conversations in the first place. She often says that money decisions are rarely about money. They are about self-worth. This belief shapes everything she teaches. Before investing, before taking risk, before chasing growth, she urges people to secure their foundation. This is not conservatism for its own sake. It is trauma-informed finance, built by someone who knows firsthand how devastating it feels to fall without a safety net. Her on-screen directness, sometimes perceived as harsh, is actually a reflection of this deeper mission. Orman understands that financial insecurity is often wrapped in denial. Gentle advice is easy to ignore. Clear, uncompromising guidance forces confrontation. Behind the scenes, her preparation is meticulous. She studies policy changes, consumer behavior, and economic conditions, but always filters them through one central question. Does this help people feel safer and more in control of their lives? If it does not, she discards it no matter how clever it sounds. Another unseen aspect of Suze Orman's work is her emphasis on boundaries. She teaches people to say no, to delay gratification, and to resist social pressure. These are not financial tactics. They are psychological defenses. Orman believes that many financial mistakes come from trying to look successful before actually being secure. Her advice to build emergency savings, avoid unnecessary debt, and ensure against catastrophe reflects a deep understanding of how fragile progress can be when life intervenes, because the real influence of Suze Orman is not found in her catchphrases or television moments, but in how she translated personal pain into a repeatable framework that millions could apply to their own lives. Part 2 is about what she built after the collapse and why her message endured, while so much financial advice faded with changing markets and trends. After rebuilding her own financial life, Orman recognized a gap that few in the industry were willing to address honestly. Most financial advice assumed emotional neutrality. It assumed that people could make rational decisions if given the right information. Orman knew this was false. Fear, shame, and denial were not side issues. They were the main drivers of behavior. Her work, therefore, centered on one radical idea for its time. Before you try to grow money, you must first make peace with it. This insight reshaped how personal finance was communicated to the public. One of Orman's most enduring contributions is her concept of financial safety as empowerment. Emergency funds, adequate insurance, and manageable debt were not presented as boring obligations, but as acts of self-respect. She reframed protection as strength. This perspective was especially powerful for people who had lived through instability, divorce, illness, or job loss. Orman did not promise wealth. She promised relief from constant fear. That promise resonated far more deeply than any promise of outsized returns. Behind the scenes, Orman was also relentless about updating her advice as laws, markets, and products changed. Unlike many gurus who froze their frameworks once famous, she continuously revised recommendations around retirement accounts, Social Security, student loans, and consumer protections. This adaptability reinforced trust. Her audience understood that her loyalty was not to ideology, but to their well-being. When advice needed to change, she said so clearly, even if it contradicted earlier guidance. Another key element of Orman's influence is her insistence on boundaries over bravado. She encouraged people to delay big purchases, resist lifestyle pressure, and avoid comparing themselves to others. In a culture that equates spending with success, this message was quietly radical. Orman understood that many financial wounds are social. People overspend to belong, to impress, or to hide insecurity. Her advice aimed to break that cycle by strengthening internal validation rather than external approval. Orman's communication style also played a crucial role. Her firmness was not about dominance, it was about clarity. She believed ambiguity gives fear room to grow. Clear rules, even uncomfortable ones, create relief. Behind the scenes, this meant refining her message constantly to make it actionable, memorable, and difficult to misinterpret. Can you afford? It was never just a numbers question. It was a values question. Could you afford the stress, the risk, the loss of safety that came with the choice? Perhaps the most overlooked aspect of Suze Orman's legacy is her long-term consistency. She did not chase every new investment trend. She did not pivot toward speculation during bull markets. She stayed anchored to protection, preparation, and self-awareness across cycles. This consistency made her advice seem repetitive to some, but that repetition was intentional. Orman understood that financial behavior does not change with one insight. It changes through reinforcement. The same message delivered steadily over time eventually replaces fear with habit. When you step back, Suze Orman's true achievement becomes clear. She did not teach people how to beat the market. She taught them how to stop being beaten by their own fear. She did not promise freedom through wealth, but through stability. In doing so, she expanded the definition of financial success. Success was no longer about accumulation alone. It was about peace of mind, resilience, and the ability to face life's uncertainty without panic. And this is where Suze Orman's story ultimately lands. Behind the scenes, her work is not about money at all. It is about dignity. It is about helping people feel safe enough to make choices deliberately rather than reactively. In a financial world obsessed with growth, she made safety respectable. In a culture that rewards risk-taking, she taught people when risk is inappropriate. That balance between courage and caution is why her voice continues to matter long after trends have shifted and markets have changed.